Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudiraye Nashtaprayesha Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavate Uttama Shloke Bhakti Bhavati Naishtiki Shrinvatam Swatata Krishna Punya Shravana Kirtanaha Yantastohi Bhadrani Vidhunoti Surutsatam. Srimad Bhagawatam, Canto 3, Chapter 5, Text number 17. So, Shri Shukra Uvacha Sa Evam Bhagavan Krishna Sa Evam Bhagavan Krishna Shatra Kausharavo Muni Shatra Kausharavo Pumsam Nishreya Sathena Pumsam Nishreya Sathena Tam Aha Bahu Mana Yan Tam Aha Bahu Mana Yan Sa Evam Bhagavan Krishna Shastra Kausharavo Muni Pumsam Nishreya Sathena Tam Aha Bahu Manayan Sa Evam Bhagavan Krishna Shatra Kausharavo Muni Pumsam Nishreya Sathena Tammaha Bahu Manayan Sa Evam Bhagavan Krishna Shatra Kausharavo Muni Pumsam Nishreya Sathena Tam Aha Bahu Manayan
Sa Evam Bhagavan Krishna Shatra Kausharavo Muni Pumsam Nishreya Sathena Sa Evam Bhagavan Krishna Shatra Kausharavo Muni Pumsam Nishreya Sathena
Sa Evam Bhagavan Krishna Shatra Kausharavo Muni Pumsam Nishreya Sathena Tammaha Bahu Manayan
Shri Shukavacha Sa evam Bhagavan Krishna Shadavoni Pumsam Nishte Satenam Tamahamayan. Word to word. Shri Shukavacha. Shri Sukadeva Goswami said, Saha He Evan thus Bhagavan, the great sage, Krishna, being requested, Shatra by Vidura, Kausharavaha, Maitreya, Munihi, the great sage, Pumsam, for all people, Nishayasya, for the greatest welfare, Arthena, for that, Tam, unto him, Aha, narrated, Bahu, greatly, Manayan, honoring. Translation. Shukadeva Goswami said, the great sage Maitreya Muni, after honoring Vidura very greatly, began to speak at Vidura's request for the greatest welfare of all people. The translation, please repeat. Shri Shukadeva Goswami said, the great sage Maitreya Muni, after honoring Vidura very greatly, began to speak at Vidura's request for the greatest welfare of all people. The great sage Maitreya Muni is described here as Bhagavan because he surpassed all ordinary human beings in learning and experience. Thus, his selection of the greatest welfare service for the world is considered authoritative. The all-inclusive welfare service for the entire human society is devotional service to the Lord. And as requested by Vidura, the sage described the same very appropriately. Om Jnana Timidam Dasyananda Shlakaya Chakshmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Mano Vishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamiyam Dadati Swapadantikam Mukam Karoti Vachalam Pangum Langayate Girim Yat Kripatamaham Vande Shri Gurum Devatarigam Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyayevacha Atitanam Pavarebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesh Gopika Kantarada Kantanamastute Taptakanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Shabhanamastute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Sa evam Bhagavan Prishta Kshatra Kausharavoni Pumsam Nishreya Sathena Tam Aha Bahumaya. Shukadeva Goswami said, the great sage Maitreya Muni, Excuse me. The great sage Maitreya Muni, after honoring Vidura very greatly, began to speak at Vidura's request for the greatest welfare of all people. So as we see, the verse here mentions who's speaking? Shukadeva Goswami. Until now we were Maitreya and Vidura. It's the same conversation, but Shukadeva Goswami is reflecting that same conversation between Maitreya and Vidura. So this particular verse says Shuka Vacha, that Shukadeva Goswami is speaking. And what is he speaking about? A conversation between Maitreya Muni and Vidura. As Prabhupada mentions in the purport, Maitreya Muni is also addressed here as Bhagavan. And we know that the Bhagavan Upadhi is mainly for the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna. It's reserved for Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, but also sometimes it's being used for his pure devotees. And in this case, it says the great sage Maitreya Muni is described here as Bhagavan because he surpassed all ordinary human beings in learning and experience. So that's why the title of Bhagavan. Can somebody please bring the book? We saw in the previous verses how the conversations actually, Vidura was asking so many questions to Maitreya Muni, and now Maitreya Muni is starting to answer the questions. And mostly, Vidura is not asking any mundane questions, he's actually not even interested. That's how we saw in the previous verses. He's not interested in any mundane topics, but he is interested in Uttama Shloka Varte, that the topics about Lord Krishna, the activities of Lord Krishna. Just like it says in Bhagavad Gita, Janma Karma Chame Divyam. The activities of the Lord, they are not ordinary, although it may seem when the Lord personally comes here in this material world, and he may act just like an ordinary child here, stealing the butter or running away from Mother Yashoda from fear of her being beaten by a stick, or playing in the forest of Vrindavan. It may all appear just like any other ordinary child, but it's definitely not on the same level as any mundane activities. That's why it says Janma, Karma, Chame, Divyam. That these activities are Divyam. What is the meaning of Divyam? Divyam. Transcendental. And transcendental because they are beyond the modes of material nature. That is Sattva, Raja, Guna. Sattva, Guna, Raja, Guna, Tamo, Guna. And even when we pass this, we come to Shuddha Sattva, and in Shuddha Sattva we can grasp the activities of the Lord by the grace of the Lord and the grace of the pure devotees. So here it mentions that how Maitreya Muni being honored by Vidura, and then the important word here also used is, it says in the verse, it mentions Nishreyasya. So what is the meaning of Nishreyasya? It means for the greatest welfare. For the greatest welfare of the human society. Just like we see that even when Srila Vyasadeva, he composed all these Vedic literatures, including later Srimad Bhagawatam by the advice of Srila Narada Muni, and he is compiling all these Vedas, all these 4 Vedas and Upanishads and Itihasas, Mahabharata, and to the point of the summary of all the Vedic literature, that is the Srimad Bhagawatam. And what is he doing for? What is he is putting all this effort, what for? Nishreyasya. for the welfare of the entire humankind. And also we see the same being reflected when in the sages of Naimisharanya they are performing all this yajna, all these sacrifices. And they are day and night they are performing this sacrifice. This is at the beginning of the Kali Yuga, and they are worried that Manda Sumanda Matayo, Manda Bhagya, that these people in the age of Kali, the human beings, they will be so disturbed, they will be so unfortunate, Manda Bhagya, Sumanda, less intelligent, so many adversities. So for their welfare, we have to perform some yajna. Right? And yajna, we have to perform the Yuga Dharma. Yajna is the Yuga Dharma. And we all know that how in every Yuga there is a different Yuga Dharma. But what is the Yuga Dharma for Kali Yuga?
Hare Nam, Hare Nam.
Hare Nam, Hare Nam, Hare Nam, Eva Kevalam. Krishna Varnam Trisha Krishnam Sangha Pangasta Parshadam. Yajna is Sankirtana Praya. So Sankirtana Yajna. Yajna is Sankirtana Praya. What is that? Sumedasa? Yajanti Sumedasa. And those who are intelligent, they will take part in this Sankirtan Yajna. And that's why when the sages of Naimisharanya, when they are performing this Yajna, and what was happening, all the smoke from the Yajna, their faces became dark by the smoke. And they went with a plea to Sutta Goswami that, oh, we are performing all this Yajna, but there's no result. Instead, our faces have become black. And what did Sutta Goswami do? Shrimatam Swakatha Krishna Punya Shravana Kirtana, that the Shravana Kirtana, that the topics of the Lord have to be heard. The Supreme Lord, the glories, or the, just like we see in Bhagavad Gita, it says Katayantascha Mam Nityam Tushyanticha Ramanticha. So that is the greatest welfare. And what is the, coming back to this word Nishreya, the welfare of the welfare activity for all human beings, but does it mean that welfare in terms of philanthropy, like giving some food to poor or giving clothing to poor, or just like back in India we had Mother Teresa, she was helping all the children who were abandoned on the streets. Yes, that is also welfare, but the Bhagavatam here, it's not talking of that kind of welfare. And we'll see further, Srila Prabhupada in his purport, he is giving the meaning of the proper welfare activity. And actually even in this purport he is mentioning here, he says the selection of the greatest welfare service for the world is considered authoritative by Maitreya, because the all-inclusive welfare service for the entire human society is devotional service to the Lord, that is Bhakti Yoga. And we see that even there are so many instances throughout Srimad Bhagavatam that how the sages, the great saintly personalities, the Brahmanas, they are always ready, even to the extent of sacrificing their own life for the benefit of others. And we see in the, if we go Maharaj Vena, the Katha of Maharaj Vena, and we know Vena is the son of Anga, and Anga is coming in the dynasty of, okay, the clue is one who attained, or one who had darshan of Lord in 6 months, Dhruva Maharaj. So it's the same dynasty, same lineage. Anga. And Anga was a very pious, saintly king, and that's what the Rajarshi was, a perfect Rajarshi. But then what happened was his son, actually he was performing so many yajnas, he had all the qualified brahmanas, first class ingredients, and yajna was performed for so many days. But the brahmanas came back to him and says, somehow the demigods and the yajna purusha, they are not accepting our offering. And what is the reason? The reason is that because we don't have a son, so we have to do a yajna so that you will have a son who is your uttaradhikari, who will be the ruler after you. So by the yajna performed by the Brahmanas, finally he gets a son, but the son turns out, what is the name of the son? Vena, right? And he turns out to be a miscreant. He turns out to be a rogue, to the extent even when he was in his childhood, he would play with his friends, and he would actually kill his friends. He would slaughter them just like the animals. He was so much of a rascal. But somehow, because the throne was empty, the Brahmanas, the sages, they put him on the throne to rule as a king. But he became so notorious. And then the sages, they thought, somehow this situation has to be taken care again for the welfare of the entire human being, because the king is the representative of the god. And there's a nice conversation between, because the sages finally they come to give him advice to Vena, that you should give up all this, you stop all the yagyas. Actually, yagyas will benefit you. And if you perform yagya, performing yagya for pleasing the Supreme Lord, it's going to bring you all good fortune. But somehow, Anga is so puffed up. He says that, actually you all should perform yajna to satisfy me. I am the Supreme Lord, and you should worship me, none other. So he was so puffed up. And what did the Brahmanas decide? That he has to go. Not just go in the sense of, vacate the throne, but he was killed just by the power of their mantras. Right? We see this is a very beautiful conversation. And when he was killed, and of course his mother Sunita, Anga's mother, she was very distressed by her son being killed. So somehow she preserved the body, and later on the sages, under the advice or the guidance of the Supreme Lord, they came, and we see how they churned. I think they churned the legs of Anga, and then out of that came Nishada. The Nishada race is still there, and Prabhupada mentions that how Nishada race, they live in the mountains, they are basically like thieves and dacoits. And then later they churned his hands, and from that came the incarnation of the Supreme Lord, the famous incarnation, Maharaj, Prithu. And we later know how Prithu, he milked the earth, and he was a good ruler. So the point here we are trying to make is that the Nishreya said that for the welfare of the human beings, the sages, they have this power. The Brahmanas, they have this power that they can set the things right. And then if we come, actually that was, if you pull out 4:14:4, Bhagavatam.
4:14:4.
And there's a very interesting word in that verse, if you can read the verse.
Sa'arudhan Nupasthana Unnad Hosta Vibhutibihi Avamene Mahabhagam Stabdha Sambhavita Svataha.
And the translation.
When the king ascended to the throne, he became all powerful with 8 kinds of opulences. Consequently, he became too proud. By virtue of his false prestige, he considered himself to be greater than anyone. Thus, he began to insult great personalities.
Oh, this is about Anga. Yes, sorry I skipped, but there's another verse, I think the beginning of this chapter 14, which says similar, that the sages did this. There's words, a particular word I'm forgetting. It's similar to this verse, the word in this verse, which is Nishriyasa, that for the welfare of the human society, the sages took this action. And then when we come, there's another incident in Bhagavatam. We come to the story of Vritrasura, and we know Vritrasura, how, the whole story behind that is that how Indra offended his spiritual master, and then he got the sinful reaction, and then he later shared his sinful reaction to 4 different personalities, like earth, water, trees, and there is one up?
Women.
Right, women. And it's interesting, how all these 4 different curses, they were shared by these 4 curses were shared by the 4 personalities, and they also got the boon, like the trees, they got the boon that even though they will be chopped off, they will grow again, like the branches when you chopped up. And then the curse they shared was that somehow the sap of, the sap coming from the tree, that is supposed to be the sin of Indra. And Prabhupada mentions in that purport that that's why the sap from the tree is prohibited. And it always kind of bothered me whenever I would take the maple syrup, right? Because that's nothing but the sap from the maple tree. We use maple syrup for pancakes, right? But I'm not, this is kind of a topic of research, that is it okay to use or not, because like it says in that particular instance that is actually the sinful reaction being shared by the trees, and so on and so forth. And then, the Vritrasura was created to kill Indra, to fight against Indra and the demigods. And Indra and demigods, they couldn't actually fight because whatever weapons they would throw at him, Vritrasura would just swallow all those weapons. And they were all stressed out, and the demigods, along with Indra, they went to the Supreme Lord. And what did Supreme Lord Krishna say? That go to Tadyaksha. In the verse it mentions, it says the particular word, it says Tadyancha. So if you can pull out 6:10:10. So Dadichi Muni, they approached Dadichi Muni, and interesting, Dadichi Muni is such a great sage, and he is instantly ready. Actually, he's ready, but then, initially when the demigods come to him and he says, oh, I think, is that the verse? Does it mention? Can you please read the verse?
This body, which is eatable by jackals and dogs after death, does not actually do any good for me, the spirit soul. It is usable only for a short time and may perish at any moment. The body and its possessions, its riches and relatives must all be engaged for the benefit of others, or else they will be sources of tribulation and misery.
So same theme again, that for the benefit of everyone, this great sage Dadichi is ready to even give up his life. And initially, of course, he's kind of pulling the legs of the demigods. He says, you're asking my life, you're asking me to give up my body, but the body is so dear to everyone. Just like even if you get a small scratch by a blade, we get so much pain, right? Or what to speak of if we are in a hospital in emergency, and just like Kusha Mataji was mentioning that, we don't want to give up this body even at the last moment, right? Like people, they're struggling, or we all think that, if we somehow get some more time to live, some more time in this body. So the body is so dear, but despite of all this, sage Dadichi is ready to give up his own body for the welfare of all the human beings. And later we know how his body was used. His bones, actually, they were used to create the Vajra, or the thunderbolt, and the same thunderbolt was used by Indra to kill Vritrasura. So that is the another example of, and in this purport, actually, Prabhupada mentions one more. If you read the purport of this same verse, he's quoting 10:22-35. If you could read that, please. And purport Prabhupada also mentions about that verse. Bharat bhumite hoile manusya janmajar janma sarthaka kari karo paropkar. So paropkar, again, the welfare activity. It's a short purport, 6:10:10.
The purport only says this translation is quoted from Srila Prabhupada's Chaitanya Charitamrita. Oh, okay.
Purport for 6:10:10.
Okay. That's quite a long purport.
So maybe the first part, 6:10:10. Are you on 6:10:10?
Yeah, I went to 6:10:10. I can.
Or actually, a purport of 10.
I can let you choose a peak.
Sorry, this is all the fault of the technology.
So that's the one
We are
that's
so
quoted.
dependent on database.
You can flip sideways. You can see one.
Oh yeah, same one. So like here he says about the Srimad Bhagawatam. So if you could read that verse and the translation.
Just read what's here.
Yes.
Etavaj janma sapalyam dehinam iha dehishu pranar artar dhiya vacha shreya acharanam sada. It is therefore the duty of every living being to perform welfare activities for the benefit of others with his life, wealth, intelligence, and words. This is the mission of life. One's own body and the bodies of his friends and relatives, as well as one's own riches and everything else one has, should be engaged for the benefit of others. This is the mission of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And then there's a quote from CC Adi 941. One who has taken birth as a human being in the land of India, Bharatvarsha, should make his life successful and work for the benefit of all other people. And then the word you were mentioning is upakuryat,
Right.
which means para upakar, helping others.
Karo Paropakar, right? That's the Bharata Bhumite Hoile Manushya Janmajar. Janma Sarthaka Kari Karo Paropakar, and we see this practically proven by Srila Prabhupada. Although back in Vrindavan he had a very comfortable position, materially as well as spiritually, but just for the sake of Paropakar, for the welfare of all the living entities, he traveled. Before him, I mean, it's even forbidden according to the strict Vedic traditions. In some mutts, the sannyasis, they don't cross the ocean. But Prabhupada took this risk and came across, suffering so much bodily pain just for the sake of the fallen conditions, including us. Yadi Prabhupada hoile, there's a song, Tabe ki hoile, that if Prabhupada would not be there, what would have happened to us? And we all can reflect in our life and see that without Prabhupada, where would we be? Right? I mean, personally, maybe I would be just in front of the screen, like when I was doing software programming back in India, and then I could imagine myself with some thick glasses, staring at the computer screen and making maybe some material advancement, but no trace of spiritual advancement. So that's what it says, the Paropkar, and Prabhupada ends this particular purport by saying the actual Paropkar is giving Krishna consciousness. The all-inclusive welfare service for the entire human society is devotional service to the Lord. As requested by Vidura, the sage described the same very appropriately. So I'm going to stop here because the time is almost over time. But I can have some quick questions or comments if anyone has on this particular verse. And I wanted to do because today also is the Pani Hatti Chida Dahi festival organized by Nityananda Prabhu and Raghunath Das Goswami. Raghunath Das Goswami. So any questions on this?
You mentioned the sacrificial fire of the yoga, that they're saying, our faces are just becoming black, no other benefit is there. I was wondering about some of the other sacrifices we do. Because I think Prabhupada has supported, as far as I know, I don't have any direct quote for it, but has supported our doing different yagas, like Nishuna Chaturdasi, we did a nice yaga. And these kind of yagas, they all feel very nice to me, but when the real yoga is just Harinam Sankirtan, why do we sometimes do fire yagas and these different things? Because we still do this initiation ceremony.
Yeah, because like you said, it's so attractive. What is that? The Vedas, the words, the mantras, the flowery language, right? It's attractive to everyone. So Prabhupada used this mainly for the purpose of preaching. Right? Even the sannyasi is not supposed to, have the attending the wedding ceremonies, but Prabhupada performed a Vedic yoga, and the main aspect in this, or the main purpose, was for the sake of preaching. And even when we had recently this huge yajna with all the massive fire, and people rushed to see it.
Yeah,
It's such a
exciting.
great preaching tool. So yes, yeah, it's being used as a preaching tool. Although we know that the main Yuga Dharma is the Sankirtan Yajna, Yajna Sankirtana Praya Yajanti Sumyasa. But for the sake of preaching, we do have to, sometimes perform these fire sacrifices. Also, sometimes for the sake of karma kanda, we have to do all these yajnas. Just like we have a wedding ceremony at the temple, and then we do the yajna.
Does it also give us good samskara for our own benefit?
The performance of the fire sacrifice. Of course, there is benefit. It's not that
No, I mean just like not just as a yajna benefit, but for us having a samskara of the event, so it stays with us longer.
It creates an impression.
Right. Yes.
So if you just exchange garlands and say hi, we're married,
Right.
that's one thing. But if you have a whole big public thing, the
Right.
whole town comes,
Very true.
and sees these two people have made a commitment. Same thing with initiation.
Right.
Sometimes, Prabhupada initiated one of my friends upstairs by chanting on her beads, telling her name.
Right.
But generally, you have the fire sacrifice to create that samskara in our chitta.
Right.
But this is a big deal. We did this in front of the deities with this big fancy sacrifice, and I should take it serious.
Yes, it's a representation because the fire is a representation of the Supreme Lord. Agni is a representation of Supreme Lord, and so they are like a witness for the whatever vidhi we do. Either it's a diksha vidhi or vivaha vidhi. So yeah, it's not completely decried. But the simplest, because just like it says, we know it's not practical for this age to have all the pure ingredients and the proper brahmanas chanting the proper mantras. So that's why it's forbidden, but still, if it is done rightly, in the right mood, right, the consciousness is the most important thing. And definitely there will be results from that which will benefit the Yajman, who is performing, and those who attend.
Yeah, I like your point that for preaching, it's the same Shreyasa. Like I heard recently Krishna Balaram installation.
Right.
Prabhupada brought in the Brahmins because otherwise the locals won't accept
Yes.
the installation. But he said, really, the real installation was our devotees chanting Hare
Yes.
Krishna.
Yeah, because at one point there was this conversation, and Prabhupada, should we do yajna? He said yes. And what should we chant? He said, just chant Hare Krishna. Because the devotees were not experienced to chant all these Vedic mantras, so many mantras. So Prabhupada, just chant Hare Krishna, that's enough. So yes, I had something about the Panihati festival, but lack of time, and I was trying to make some chira dahi, but we don't have the chip rice. So maybe I will try to get some, from the Indian store, and maybe we have some for the noon offering. It's very simple, just chip rice, yogurt, and little sugar and bananas. So we will have this because Nityananda Mahaprabhu, he actually forcibly grabbed Raghunath Bhatta, and he said, "Where were you for so long? And I'm going to punish you. You are a thief." And Raghunath was a little kind of, and so Nityananda grabbed him, and he said, "The punishment is that you are going to make this feast with chira and dahi, and feed all the brahmanas, feed all the." And it's a very beautiful description of how this whole festival takes place, but lack of time, so we didn't do it. And yeah, it's on the bank of Ganges. They have this beautiful festival of chira dahi. And here also, I think in Atlanta, they do it in a big way, I heard, right?
Yeah.
That's
I never attended one, but I heard they
their
have.
big festival every year.
Near Panihati.
Yes. Actually, Panihati is like a particular village near to Mayapur. So that's where this beautiful pastime took place. So I'll try my best if I can arrange some chirari for the pleasure of the ones. So thank you very much. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagawatam ki jai, Samaved Bhaktivinoda ki jai. Mahaprasade Govinde Namo Namo Vaishnave Swatapunyavatam Rajan Vishwasade